The studio in which I work at the Columbia Princeton Electronic Music Center is, of course, specially equipped with many electronic devices, but it also contains a conventional piano. It is here that I note my compositions using garden variety music paper. However, strips of graph paper have been overlaid, and it is on these that I transcribe electronic effects. Using the electronic apparatus here in the studio, I will explain the ways in which my sound materials are created, and I will demonstrate some of the fundamental processes by which sounds, once they are available to a composer recorded on magnetic tape, are transformed, combined, and organized into a sound structure. There are naturally two sources of sound materials, electronic and non-electronic. Pure electronic sounds are produced by electronic signal generators. A sine wave generator produces one frequency only at any given setting of the dial. By turning the dial, one can produce an effect akin to a glissando. The sine wave sound, as you have heard, is characteristically pale and colorless. A more complex, richer sound is produced by the so-called sawtooth wave generator. In a low register, it sounds like a horn on the Queen Mary coming up the Hudson River. It is of particular interest because the signal contains all of the harmonics of the overtone series. Another common generator has an interesting name, a white noise generator. It produces simultaneously all frequencies. An impression of noise is created, totally devoid of any feeling of pitch. The fourth purely electronic sound is the square wave, a combination of several frequencies in a definite relationship. That slightly buzzy, somewhat hollow quality rather resembles tones produced on the bass clarinet, doesn't it? Let's leave purely electronic sounds for a moment and turn to non-electronic ones. Non-electronic sounds include, of course, every type of sound produced by man. Man-made machines, sounds of nature, and the sounds of our musical instruments. Once they have been captured on tape, they become raw materials for the composer in the same way as electronically generated sounds. But few sounds find their way into compositions in their raw form. Here, for instance, is an ordinary piano chord. Electronic music admits into the category of usable material all possible types of sound, but the emphasis is on transforming rather than simply reproducing raw sounds. Thus, the original sound of that chord struck on the piano is radically transformed by simply playing it backward, a well-known phenomenon. I will play you two transformed sounds. First, the human voice, which will become unintelligible and harsh, and then several consecutive notes which came originally from a trumpet and still retain a metallic timbre. Let me deal now with the processes by which composers convert all their raw materials into a finished composition on tape. The tape, needless to say, can be manipulated in many ways. I'll splice together several sound components from a composition of mine to be performed shortly and make a tape loop of it. A tape loop makes it possible for a sound or a combination of sounds to be repeated indefinitely while the composer experiments with varying speed or modifying the timbre of the sounds. The most common manipulation is to vary the speed of the taped sounds. Technically, we achieve this by having a sine wave generator to drive a tape recorder's motor. We will play the loop through one revolution at normal speed, and then through several revolutions with variations of the speed. The next very common method of sound transformation is the use of electronic filters. A filter is essentially a subtracting device. It takes away a certain portion of the total frequencies which may be found in any given sound. The sound can become in turn less brilliant, completely muffled, or very thin. A filter such as we use in our studio is called a bandpass filter, indicating that selected parts of a sound may be allowed to pass through the filter unchanged, while other parts of the sound are removed. Here is a square wave filtered in this way. Still another common method of sound modification is the addition of artificial reverberation. Basically, the reverberation imparts an additional color, thus changing the timbre of sound. In addition, it normally also adds a kind of tail and dynamic contour through the lengthening of the sound. Reverberation has to be handled with good judgment, but a careful use of it produces startling transformation. First, I'll take our old square wave and both filter and reverberate it. And then, in addition to filtering and reverberating, I will also vary the speed. Taking the several thus manipulated sounds, one can easily make patterns which consist either of very weird sounds or, as the next short excerpt from an actual electronic composition illustrates, a pattern which resembles conventional instruments.